Okay, the next macro that I would like to create is a bit more advanced than this, and I kind of have my doubts, but let's try it anyway. So, what I would like this to do is basically make it easier for me to take notes on videos I watch, particularly YouTube videos. So, in case you didn't know, there's actually a plugin in Obsidian called Media Extended, which allows you to watch YouTube videos directly in Obsidian. And you could basically press a keyboard shortcut to insert a timestamp automatically. It's pretty neat, but there's some things I don't really like about this. I'll show you what I mean by that. So why don't we get a video set up and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so let's say that this is a video that I wanted to take notes on. So I can copy the URL. I mapped a keyboard shortcut to Control-Shift-V. This is part of that Media Extended plugin. I just search Media Extended. This is how you open up media from a link. Control-Shift-V. Then I can paste the URL. I'm going to get rid of that timecode. So then it opens up the video right inside of Obsidian. And it was just playing at double speed for whatever reason. Change that to normal. I want to turn it down so that I don't hear it. But what's really useful about it is, let's say that this document is not really what a document would look like for video notes, but let's say I wanted to insert some video notes up here. Well, if I want to insert that particular moment, what's my keyboard shortcut again? I can do a get timestamp from player, which I have mapped as Control T right now. So if I hit Control T while this is playing, it inserts a timestamp of that current time. And I can click on it and it'll take me to that moment in the actual video because I got the timestamp element. How cool is that? So that's a pretty neat little way to take video notes. And then if I want, I can also, this is a cool moment. We learned about resistors. Blah, blah, blah. You know, I would take notes at a particular moment and then I can jump to that moment if I really want. It's a pretty neat system. But what I don't like about this, at least the way this works right now, is of course my keyboard shortcuts don't actually work. I mean, I can play and pause with spacebar. I can hit K, but I can't use J and L to fast forward and rewind. I can't hit C to toggle the captions. Can't use my keyboard shortcut to speed up or slow down a video. And then I hate how it blurs right there. Sometimes I want to see what's on a video so I can take notes based on that. That's pretty ridiculous if you ask me. I kind of like how it works on YouTube directly. I just like how the controls all work. Because I could use all my keyboard shortcuts, speed up, slow down a video, rewind, fast forward. So I'm thinking, if only I could just watch it in YouTube and then do that exact same concept where I insert the time code, but directly from YouTube rather than this embedded bugginess right here. So I want to try to create a macro that can insert the time code directly from here rather than here. But I do this exact same concept where I take the notes and then insert the time code. Because what I want to eventually do is have basically this right here, a Kanban board with different categories of notes. And then I could put some specific things on here, take notes for that particular thing. I'll probably link the video in my note and then all the moments that I want to basically take notes on. Sometimes I'll watch videos that have a lot of technical stuff in it, then I'll try to remember it, but a lot of times I want to go back into it, and it's kind of a pain to deal with that. So I want to start taking notes on videos in this fashion if there's stuff that I want to be able to reference later on. Just press the keyboard shortcut to insert the time, then elaborate on that particular moment. But I'd like to be able to do it directly from the browser. See where I'm going with this? I basically want to do exactly the same thing as the old system, but in the web browser. And just like how I created my reverse list order right here, I want to create another macro that can do stuff for my video note-taking stuff. So I think I'm going to use Python to do that once again. So let's just get into it. So there's a whole bunch of different approaches that I could take if I want to take notes directly from the web browser. So there's a couple things I got to think about. First of all, since I'm in the web browser, how do I get that inserted into my notes? How do I get stuff from my web browser to here? The other thing I'm trying to keep in mind is I want something that ideally works on Windows, Mac, and Linux too. So of course there's a lot of different ways I could use AutoHotkey. In the past I created an AutoHotkey script, and what I ended up doing was right-clicking, copy video URL at the current time, and then I have a URL with the time embedded right in it, as you can see here. So I think when I insert the time, I'm probably just going to have it copy the URL, embed it, but also use that URL to insert the time in this format right here. So rather than trying to retrieve some information from a window like this time right here, I would rather just right click and copy URL at current time and then just convert this into a timecode format. I think that would be a much better approach. There should be a Python library that allows me to click. So I want to be able to right click and click this copy URL at current time. I want to be able to move the mouse, and I want to be able to basically paste stuff too. Since I'm copying this to the clipboard, I might want to be able to access the clipboard so I can get the time code from that number right there. So how do I go about accomplishing that? Well, I did a little bit of research ahead of time, and I think I should be able to do a lot of that stuff with a library called AutoGUI. I should be able to use a library like this. So I'm going to make sure I have it installed by saying pip install, then that. Okay, I don't have it installed, so it's a good thing I'm doing that. What I like about this is I think it works pretty much the same in Mac and Windows at least, and hopefully Linux too. I'm probably going to start using Linux a lot more in the future, and hopefully I can do the exact same thing. That's one of the reasons I switched to Obsidian, because it's kind of universal across the platforms, and it works nicely. So while we're waiting for this, why don't we look at the documentation for AutoGUI. There should be documentation right here. So this should give us all the different things we can do. So if we look at this code right here, looks like we can click at a particular XY coordinate, which is perfect. And I assume that we can left click and right click as well. Looks like we can also type stuff here, and even have an interval with how quickly it types each character. So we can type and also press different keyboard shortcuts with hotkey. We should be able to do pretty much everything we want. So now let's say we can at least right click on our video. I think that would be a good starting point. So first we need to import our library. Then it looks like we can click at some specific location. I think this is probably what we want to use. And I think I saw somewhere that you can specify either left, right, or middle as a third argument. I'm going to see if I can specify right. Then I'm also going to add a delay so that we have time to go to where we want. I'm going to say time.sleep, maybe 5. Then I can start the script and go to where I want to use it. So where do I want to click? So 0, 0 is up here. X increases when I go along the right. Y increases when I go along downward. So maybe this is like 200, 300. I think that'll almost certainly work. I'll just do 200 and then 300. We'll see if that works. So I should be able to run this script. Python, insert timecode, and then it should right click in 5 seconds. So give it a couple seconds. Well, it moved the cursor, but it didn't necessarily right click. Maybe it did right click, it's just Chrome wasn't in focus. Oh, I just found another website that I think kind of goes over mouse specific stuff. And if I look right here, it specifies a keyword argument called button. I might need to do that right here as well. So if I just change that to button equals right, possibly, then I might be able to do exactly what I wanted. Let's find out if that's the right way to do it. Oh, heck yeah. So now we can right click and get that menu to come up. So now I just want to move it over just a little bit and then click this. So at this point, I think I'd find it most helpful to be able to track the XY coordinate of the mouse. I could use things like Windows Spy, or else my Stream Deck actually has an XY coordinate thing. I'll just use that for now. So right now I can see a live feed of an XY coordinate. This is 760, 531. So I right click wherever I right click. I'll actually run the script again. That way it's at the exact position and I'm not like just offsetting it. So that is in fact at 200, 300. So I want it to also left click at this position. So that's 302 and 405 where I'm at right now. So why don't we duplicate this and just change that to 302 and 405. And I think I could just get rid of that button altogether. And then it should left click at that position now. So let's see if it copies the URL now. Okay. Yeah, it worked. So now we should have a URL that's the same as what there was before, but I believe it just worked. So at this point, we actually have a URL that we can paste into our file. So now I think it'd be useful to figure out how we can access what we copied to the clipboard. So I think there's another Python library called clipboard, and I should be able to just access everything on there as a variable. So I'm going to install the clipboard with pip. Looks like we're already good, so I should just have to import clipboard. So I think they have a copy and paste function. So I think if I wanted to access what was in the clipboard at the moment, I should be able to just say clipboard.paste if I'm not mistaken. So I've done something like this before. So why don't we, for now, ignore these lines right here and see what's in our clipboard paste. I should have done this before delay. So there's our video URL. So what I can actually do is just say URL is equal to our clipboard.paste. Then I can just give it a this. So we now have our URL that's actually stored in a variable. So now I think at this point it would make sense to convert it into the format that we want displayed for our hyperlink right here. We want to just copy it to that format right there. So to do that, we need to get this number of seconds right here. Even if it's not as precise as the plugin, I don't really care. I don't need it to be 1803.696969. I don't need that much precision. But a second of precision is probably going to be enough for me. That's still pretty good, especially compared to what I used to do before this. So now that we have the URL, let's see if we can get those seconds alone. Okay, so the way I see it, there's a couple different ways we can approach this. I would probably use regular expressions. It's a little bit confusing sometimes, but I think I know enough that we can get this going. I'm going to go to my import statement and I'll use the RE library. And then basically we want to create the actual pattern that we're searching. So let's just call it something like time pattern equals re.compile. Then I think in string, you just do the regular expression syntax. So what's something that's going to be reliable for matching the number of seconds all by itself? Well, I could do a t equals, I can start off by saying t equals one or more numbers. So t equals and one or more numbers right there. It might not always be at the very end of a thing, so I'm just gonna probably leave it like this. And then let's try to see if we can get the number of seconds alone. So num seconds equals the URL dot match time pattern. So in theory, I think that should give us a number of seconds all by itself. So let's print the number of seconds and see if that works. I gotta get rid of that delay, or at least comment it out. Oh, I think I got myself backwards here. So I actually want to flip everything around. So this should be time pattern dot match. Time pattern dot match the match URL, because I want to do a regular expression library specific thing. Match it with URL, I guess. I just probably had things backwards. I'm having a little bit of tough luck actually, so I think I'm going to do a whole different approach. I'm just going to find where the equal sign is in the string, and then basically everything from there till the end is going to be the time code. If I right click to copy the URL at timecode, that's always going to be at the very end. So I can be almost certain that the time code is the very last part. So I think what I might be able to do is take url.index for the equal character possibly, and it'll give me that. Okay, I just had to recopy it to the clipboard again. Now I'm getting 30. So I copy and pasted something before, so that's the index of the URL. So in theory, I should actually be able to take, I don't know if this is gonna work perfectly. This might not be the most ideal way to do it, but I should be able to take URL index that all the way up to the end. I think that should give me the right characters. Okay, so for whatever reason I just couldn't do it inside of itself, so I created a variable beforehand, and then from that index to the very end I now have this alone, but I don't want to include the equal sign, so I could just right here say equal sign plus 1. Now I have the number all by itself in seconds from that URL. So I should be able to take that and convert it into the timecode format. So I've actually done something very similar to this in the past, where I take that URL part and convert it into a timecode, and this essentially converts it into hour, minute, second format. I know that on here it's minute, second format if it's less than an hour, hour, minute, second format if it's at least an hour, probably second format if it's seconds, but I'm gonna stay with hour, minute, second format no matter what. I don't care what really happens. I'm gonna keep it as hour, minute, second format. So I should be able to just take this function from my other script, and I probably have to define it a little bit earlier. I'll probably just define it up here, and then I'll call that function down here. So what I actually want to do is basically take what I printed right here and actually set that to the number of seconds. That's now the correct thing. So to just take this and put it here instead, then I should have the number of seconds. And then I can just put in num seconds right here. So I could just do HMS format for the hour, minute, second format variable. And I think that's where I'll put it. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. See if it's the correct thing now. Equal sign is not defined. I just need to move it before the place that I actually use it. Then it should work. So now we have a compatibility issue. So this is actually a string when I think it's meant to be an integer. So before I even pass it in, I actually want to pass in the integer format for number of seconds. And I think that'll fix that issue. Oh, how many issues can I possibly have at once? I think I might just need to copy the URL again. Then maybe it'll work this time. Oh yeah, there we go. So now I basically, from the URL alone, I got the hour, minute, second. So that's pretty much all I really need. So now that I have the hour, minute, second, I basically want to create a hyperlink. Insert a hyperlink in this format right here. So using Markdown, you just do the bracket syntax for what you want it to display as, and then the URL. So do we still have the original URL at some point? Yeah, we don't modify URL in any way. So we still have the original URL. So what I want to paste then is, I'll just say to insert equals, I'll probably do an F string most likely. And inside of there, within those brackets, I want the hour, minute, second format variable. And then in the parentheses, and I want the actual URL at that given time, so I can just reference that. So in theory, I think what I'm inserting is exactly that. So let's change to insert and see if that's the right format for Markdown. And again, I think this error is just caused by no longer having this in the clipboard. You'd be surprised how many times that error is going to happen on this project. Oh yeah. So that's basically what I want inserted into Obsidian right there. So we basically have the string that we're inserting now, which is pretty sweet. So I think probably the easiest way to insert it is to paste it by pressing Ctrl V right in Obsidian. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of window switching. I'll probably just use Alt Tab because that's probably the simplest way to switch windows between those two applications. So now we just need to systematically think about exactly how this is gonna work. So we could probably use this hotkey right here. So once I have the URL copied, I can do the calculations in theory. So this is now where we want to insert it into Obsidian. So I think what I want to do is just copy this right here. Then we'll change it to Alt. And I think Tab should just work. So that'll Alt Tab it into hopefully Obsidian. I'm probably going to use that wrong in some situations, but I'll try to use it correctly. I'm sure I'm going to form a good habit with that. Actually, how's this going to work? So that actually holds down Alt, then it hits Tab. Because this holds down Control, then it hits C, so I think it should hold down the key that I want. Otherwise, I could just do dot hold with Alt, then press Tab, then dot release, I assume, to release it. So I think it just makes sense to hit Control V. But what am I actually pasting? I want to paste what I'm inserting, but I think you can actually, using this clipboard right here, you can put new line characters in there too, I think. So what I'm probably going to do is insert a new line and then the time code. That way there's a bit of spacing. And I'll probably do another new line character, which is where I'll start typing. So how's that going to work exactly? This is pretty much a matter of creating a macro at this point. So I think I could use clipboard.copy to get what I want to actually insert. I think I'll do that as an F string as well. So I'll do a new line character followed by two inserts, probably followed by another new line character. So I'm not entirely sure if that's what I want to insert. I'm going to assume I have it correct until we test it. Then I guess we'll find out if it really was the right thing or not. So this is obviously going to go above rather than below. So once we insert it into the clipboard, then I think it's a matter of hitting Control V, right? So I'll just copy this, and then we'll change that to Control V. Then it should paste it exactly how I want, and I can probably start typing my notes. I'm going to type it at the bottom of the timecode rather than above, just for simplicity's sake right now. If I ever update it in the future to go to the top, then I guess I'll let you know. But I think this will work just fine. So now we got to get the right click mechanism all figured out. So I'll just put this right. So where do we want to do it? Probably right here. We can get rid of that time pattern because we're no longer using that. So once we define that function, then we'll right click and copy. Probably uncomment that for now because we're about to use it. So I think I'll just have this running at all times. I'm not going to have this be a Obsidian specific macro because I want YouTube to be in focus when I press the keyboard shortcut. Hopefully that'll end up working with no problem. So I right click, copy to the URL, retrieve the URL, figure out where my equal sign is, get the number of seconds all by itself, convert that into hour, minute, second format, then basically determine what I'm actually inserting now that I have all my components. I'm basically stitching them together in markdown format. Then I'm just looking at what that looks like, which I don't need to do anymore. Then I press Alt-Tab to switch to Obsidian. Otherwise, I could try some sort of window activation. Not even going to bother trying that though. Readjusting the clipboard to put how exactly I want it with new line characters before and after. And then actually pasting it. This clipboard.paste is really just a Python command that allows me to put it in a variable. It's actually reading from the clipboard and not actually pasting to wherever, most likely. It's allowing me to get it in a variable, then I can just press Control V when I actually want to paste it for real. I'll have to also make sure I'm not in insert mode right here, because paste won't work when I'm in Vim. So that'll be something to keep in mind, I guess, too. But I'll form good habits, I'm sure. So let's see if we can actually get this madness to work now. So we're just going to run it once, but then we're probably going to have to make it event driven. Then it'll work all the time, hopefully. I may actually not end up doing the event driven part today, because this is really the meat of how everything works. We just have to figure out how to do an event driven shortcut from there, and it'll work exactly how I want. For now, let's just see if this ends up working. So I'm going to need to make sure that Obsidian is most recent before I go into Chrome. Otherwise, I think we're ready to run it. Let's see if it works successfully. I'm going to go to a whole different moment, just so we know it works with a whole different time. So let's run it now. Ready? We got this. Oh, that position's a little bit different. And Alt Tab never worked. Does it work when I'm outside of full screen? Oh, that's a little weird. So this means that the URL wasn't quite in the clipboard. Oh, and it wasn't in the clipboard because it actually misclicked the button, which I guess errored out the whole script. Good to know. I might want it to actually work when I'm in full screen. So what's the actual position when I'm in full screen to begin with? So I'm going to comment that out. Might want to leave a reminder to uncomment this when I'm ready to use it again. So I just wanted to run up to this and then ignore everything else. Okay, so I'm just commenting everything out. And then I can figure out what the XY coordinates are. So I'm still getting the live feed on my Stream Deck. So now I just want to run this again. Oh, and I do need this actually, so I take that back. I do need to get in my video. So now it'll click in the correct position, hopefully. So that's of course at 200, 300, and then I want to do 324 by 431. That's probably what I'll do. I'll just have it be in full screen. 324 by 431. And then now I can actually treat it for real. So now I'll see if it actually works for real this time. Okay, moment of truth. That clicked a little bit wrong. Did you see what actually happened right there? Oh, I was supposed to modify the second pair of coordinates, not the first. So that should be 200 by 300, and then 324 by 431. I think this is where we need that. Creating macros can be kind of a pain, but it works nice when it works successfully. I wouldn't be surprised if even Microsoft Automate would be able to do something like this too. But again, I need something that works across all platforms. This should also work on Mac, I would think, too. The coordinates might be a little bit different because the look is just a little different. Anyway, let's try it now that I've actually tweaked this a little bit. Moment of truth. Ready? What just happened? So it didn't paste. It never pasted. When I manually paste it, then it works. Nice. But it didn't automatically work for whatever reason. Maybe because Obsidian wasn't quite in focus yet. I might need to give it a little bit of time before it does this, because maybe it was a little bit too fast. So I'm just gonna give it like a whole second. Little overkill, but I just want to make sure that's what it is, and then I'll dial it down. When you deal with macros and stuff, you have to do things one step at a time like this and look at things on an individual basis like that. So I'll just pick some random moment right here. Let's try to take notes on this particular moment now. These are some other notes. So then I think the way I want it spaced is probably like this. So I'll have my cursor here. Go back into YouTube. And then let's see if this works now. Yep. It just did it too fast. Now I can take notes on that particular moment. I'm not going to be waiting 5 seconds, obviously. That wait is just so I have enough time to set up everything. So now, we can probably dial it down to like 0.2, I'm sure that would work fine. Maybe we should check real quickly and make sure it does. Yes, 0.2 seems to be enough time, so that's good. I was going to add the event-driven programming, but I don't feel like doing that right now with the amount of time I have. We basically got the gist of this working. I'll maybe show what I did in the future if I get a chance to edit that in. Here's an update regarding the Obsidian Timecode macro on Windows and Mac. I tried to use event-driven programming to listen for key presses, but my initial attempt didn't work, and I decided to use AutoHotkey instead, and that works perfectly when I use Ctrl-Shift-W to trigger the Python script. On the Mac, I had a lot of difficulty getting that to work properly, so I ended up remapping Control-Tab and Control-V to Command-Tab and Command-V, and Command is the word that Mac uses for the Command key. I'm currently using Espanso to trigger the script on Mac since keyboard shortcuts are unreliable in general, even Stream Deck hotkeys, which works best in Finder when it's in focus, but it's also hit and miss. Espanso doesn't suffer as much with that, and most of my shortcuts are through that anyway. I had to set the display variable so it worked on my graphical screen and not some random TTY or something. I kept getting weird behavior where it would delete the last parenthesis and not insert a new line character properly. After hours of troubleshooting, I determined this behavior happens even on a fully empty Python script initiated by Espanso. It must be something with these two environments coming together. If I add an endless sleep, I don't get that behavior, but the Python launcher appears on the Mac dock and it'll continue until that sleep is over and I can't launch other instances in the meantime. When I quit the launcher, Espanso outputs text which screws up whatever I had unless it types somewhere else like the Spotlight search bar. I tried properly exiting the script with os.exit or sys.exit, but the same thing happens no matter how I end the script. I tried terminating the app through the command line, but to no avail. At this point, I have a few options that I haven't quite decided on yet. I could right-click and force quit the launcher every time and deal with the text output from Espanso that gets spilled in. I could try the keyboard shortcut way, but deal with most shortcut presses not registering due to Mac OS glitches. What I'm probably going to end up doing is triggering it from Obsidian instead and have it switch to YouTube, copy the URL, then switch back to Obsidian to paste it. But even that has a risk of suffering the same problem as Espanso does. If it doesn't, I may reach out to Espanso and let them know what happens to make them aware of this since it is specific to them. But for now, we got something that actually works quite well, I think, for video note taking. So now I can store all my notes right here and just take notes wherever I want and organize them all on this particular Kanban board, which is pretty sweet. Right here I got some more general notes, but video specific notes will go here. So I think that's actually going to be kind of a nice system. So there we go, that's basically how I'm doing the video note taking stuff now. Actually, let's see if we can get it to work in Mac. I think that's a reasonable compromise. Why don't we see if we can, you know, I don't think it's really necessary because I'm sure the library will work. I may just have to adjust this a little bit. Otherwise, everything else should be virtually the same. I don't think it's really necessary. I'll maybe do some status update in the future if it's different than that, but you know, if you want to do it in Mac, I challenge you to convert this into the Mac format. If you need the code, then write a comment and I'll reply by pasting this code, and then you can use it yourself and see if you can get this to work in Mac. Of course, I could get rid of the regular expression dependencies. I'm no longer using that. But yeah, if you need to use it in Mac or Linux, you can take this and convert it to that, I'm sure. Especially if you watch kind of how I went through this.